Gear Tasting Radio is brought to you by Imminent Threat Solutions. ITS provides knowledge that empowers individuals with indispensable skill sets to explore the world and prevail against all threats. Right now, as a special thank you for all podcast listeners, we're offering 10% off in the ITS store. Simply use the code GTR to save 10% at store.itstactical.com. Welcome to Gear Tasting Ready, where we offer an in-depth look into the usage and philosophy behind the equipment in our lives. I have some equipment in front of me, and I also have Rob Henderson, who's joining me.
Hello.
And my name is Brian Black.
I just noticed that
Yeah,
in our daily lives,
the stuff that I have sitting around in my daily life.
You know,
I've
who
got
doesn't
some-
have debt cord?
Nah, I've got some props laid out in front of me today. So what we're going to be talking about is booby traps and some breaching stuff. So what I mean is tools and devices that are available to help you either with an ingress or an egress,
Yeah.
I guess.
We've been
is
trying
kind
to
of
figure out like a name for this, like that encompasses all of it.
You know, in some of our gear tasting episodes, I've highlighted tools like bolt cutters and things like that, and it's just really, like, I use the term breaching, but that's not really a good descriptive nomenclature for what some of this stuff is. It's like getting into somewhere or getting away from something is really kind of the best way to describe that. And
Quickly.
And the things we've thought about are either booby traps or breaching. So, I mean, it kind of fits that, but
Fits enough.
yeah. And I would say booby traps are things that you would leave to alert you of somebody else's presence.
Yep.
I mean, that would be a good way to
Definitely.
describe that. And another is getting into areas, and I'm not talking about lockpicks because we have talked about lockpicks at all already. And I'm not going to specifically highlight that. This is more, I don't know what you'd call this. Like,
I would call this like louder than
like a
lockpicks.
hasty
Yeah, you need to
method
go
for-
right now.
or getting into something. Yeah.
Especially if it's an evacuation scenario or something like that. And this isn't like, oh, you've broken into the secret spy base and you're leaving.
Yeah,
You know,
we're not talking about anything illegal,
No.
so make sure you consult local laws. That's my disclaimer for this episode. For some of the stuff we talk about, if you can't have it, but this is basically getting out or getting through something that's an obstacle in your way, kind of an emergency, like life or limb. You know, kind of what we talked about last episode. You know, you can use emergency radio channels that you're not authorized to use if it's a life and limb emergency scenario. So that's kind of what I'm referring to. So first, I guess we could talk about like bolt cutters.
Yep.
I guess that's kind of where we could start. So I've got this, and I've talked about these on Gear Tasting a little bit, but I have this pair of tough built F140.
I still need to pick those up. I love that
is
idea.
what they're called.
They're
And-
folding.
Yeah, they're folding, which I think is a pretty cool design.
Yeah.
So normal bolt cutters are pretty long because you need length to get the leverage you need to actually, cut a
What is that?
lock
Is that
or something
fulcrum?
like that. Yeah, you need the fulcrum or
you
the
got it.
mechanical advantage
there you
for
go.
that. So these actually fold, so they kind of lock into place, and then you've got that
And still gives you the
fulcrum or
length.
the leverage.
great.
Right. Yeah, so I still have to paint these. Like, I don't like this bright yellow color, but honestly, these would be in a pack or
Right.
something.
In the
anyway.
meantime, they're in a
Yeah.
bag or something. Yeah.
But I did put some shock cord at the bottom to kind of hold these together because they get
Good idea.
they get a little janky.
Yep.
They kind of flop open, so shock cord holds those together pretty well. So this would be, let's say somebody put a lock on your egress point and you needed to get out. That would be what bolt cutters were for, to cut through fencing or concertina wire or something like that. But there's also purpose-built devices for that too. You can find these kind of Gerber concertina wire cutters that'll also cut, cyclone fence well too.
Probably chain link would go pretty
chain link
quickly.
fence, same thing.
Yeah.
I think that's what they call that, right? Chain link fence is also cyclone fence?
probably.
Maybe? I don't know. A fence expert will probably let us know.
You're not going through a wood fence with that.
Yeah,
I'll say
so,
that.
I mean, this will basically cut through wire fencing. You can use, a pair of really strong dikes to do that too, but these are purpose-built for that. So that's kind of like, I don't know, that would cover that kind of application.
And I think a lot of people think they're going to like use their multi-tool to do that kind of stuff. And like, you could probably cut through a fence with a multi-tool, but it's going to take you a super long time, and then the cutters on your multi-tool are really small. So this is just one of those things that if it's a possibility that you're going to have to cut through something like that, you might as well just make it easier on yourself.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're trying to go up and over a fence to egress and it's got, concertina wire or something at the top, it would basically leave you with the default of either trying to cut that or to cut a hole in the fence or to pull up a fence to get out, there are emergency situations you could wind up in where a fence was blocking your path of true egress. So that's really what we're talking about here. Also, when you're talking about kind of hasty methods to get through something, for those of you that don't know how to pick locks or something like that out there, there's this spray that I found that I've used it on just a cheap padlock before. Excuse me, but it's something that I want to test more. But it's basically called Super Cold, and Super Cold 134, and it's almost like a commercially available version of Freon almost. So it's basically what would happen if you turned a canned air upside down and sprayed it. You get that cold air, but this is like 10 times better than that. So you can actually freeze off a cheap lock or
brittle
something
enough
like
to
that.
break.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And then a pry bar would be included in something like this too. I just don't have one in front of me.
Sure.
But that would be kind of the same type of deal, that mechanical advantage with leverage to, either pop a lock or to get into something too. So I would kind of define that in this kind of set of things we're going through too. So I don't know. Can you think of any other tools
Well, I was
like
just
that?
trying to think of if you get somewhere, I think a pry bar is a great thing to have, whether it's a full-size crowbar or a small one, because, I have an elderly grandmother that has the propensity to lock the door and then fall and not be able to get to the door. So being able to pry that door open would be super helpful. And, if you forget the combination to a lock or something like that and you don't have time to open the shed or something, so that would be the Super Cold. But yeah, I would just a crowbar or a small pry bar is a good thing to have. I have like a small kind of flat profiled one that I really like. The bigger the better, because like you said, that leverage is going to make it a lot easier to open that. So small tools are great, but then they don't give you that same advantage.
And this would be a scenario where you don't care about the destruction of the property you're going through, whether it's your own or, like you said, I'm trying to get into grandma's house because she's hurt or something like that. You're not worried about surreptitious entry and being quiet or something like that. And that's not to say that that's the only purpose for lockpicks, but you're going to actually use up more time doing that than you would just putting a crowbar in the door and dealing with the repercussions of that damage later.
Yeah, you can always replace the door.
Right. So,
and this isn't for breaking into somebody's house. This isn't what we're talking about. Like we said, this is for like when you're having to leave somewhere. And, I have cousins that have property that kind of share fences with people. And if somebody were to shut that fence and lock it without their knowledge and they're trying to leave in an emergency or something, you want to get that lock off there. You can always buy the guy a new lock.
Or drive through it.
Yeah. Well, so that was something else I was going to mention is that, you can drive through it, but I would hate to damage my vehicle driving through a fence when I could have just cut it or done something.
I agree.
Especially like I'm trying to get out of the area. But because I think a lot of people would default to like, oh, just drive through it. It's like, well, I mean, I would hate to damage the vehicle. Yeah.
And then I guess kind of the flip side of this is the booby trap aspect of devices too. So, basically you're trying to gain the upper hand of somebody that's pursuing you, something like that. So,
and it doesn't have to be a human.
Yeah.
Animals.
Yeah. And that's, that goes along with also alerting you to somebody else's presence too, because, I've done this before. I get into some shady campsite when I'm camping and I'm like, you know what, man, I don't trust anybody around here. Those people really gave me the heebie-jeebies when I pulled in. I don't know if they're going to try to do something tonight. So I've set up basically, tripwire type booby trap systems to where it'll either sound an audible alarm if they break that wire, trip through that wire, or crack a chem light or something like that too. There's actually these surface trip flares that I wanted to talk about first.
Those are so cool.
So this is basically a metal plate that's spring-loaded, and you affix a chem light, which that's basically a glow stick or a light that you can break to light up if you're not familiar with what a chem light is. But you wedge it into this system, and you basically cock it like you would a mouse trap or something like that. And then once that wire is tripped or line is broken, it releases that spring, and it actually cracks the chem light.
Yep.
So you get that visual indication that somebody's been in the area. But these are, I don't know, man, I've got these so long ago. These expired in 1992, so I've had them a long time.
Nice.
But I've never used them because I don't know.
I love the idea that you had where you're talking about putting an IR chem light in there.
Yeah, and that would be kind of a discrete, visual method too, because then you could be under nods and observe, a point, and the person that probably tripped that, unless they heard the spring activate, probably wouldn't even know what that was if they did hear it.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to see it.
Yeah, so
that's cool.
They wouldn't be able to unless they were also on night vision. But
you have bigger problems at that point, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, there's obviously a covert, clandestine aspect of this that's really cool. But like you said, this is great for, are you in areas with bears? Put it around trees around your site. That'll at least give you a little bit more warning. I mean, not that you're going to be able to do much, but you will at least be aware of it, which is a good thing.
Well, so we talked about kind of the visual indicator with like the surface trip flare with the chem light. There's also audible indicators, which these are old demilled fuses from grenades. So like military grade surplus, obviously they've been demilled, so there's nothing dangerous about them. But somebody has configured these, aftermarket, and put in a spring and basically a primer striker. So if we're familiar with, I think it's a 102 primer from a shotgun shell.
Okay.
So you basically load the primer into there, and this has got a pin
to pull a tripwire.
Yeah, so if the tripwire gets pulled, the pin pulls, this snaps shut,
set the primer
and
off.
Hits the primer. So it's like a primer going off, but you don't have you don't have a bullet coming out. Obviously, it's just the primer
just
that
the noise of the primer
makes the bang.
Interesting.
Yeah, so you basically wrap this around a tree somewhere, and then you run your wire somewhere too.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and then I always loved this surplus grade tripwire. There's like yellow and OD.
Yeah,
I think it's cool as shit. But it's basically for, to blend in with different environments. So if you got a light area like you're running across some water, you'd go with the yellow color. If you've got a dark area running across foliage, you'd use the OD color tripwire. But
nice.
That's kind of the old school stuff. Comes on these little wooden spools that are pretty neat. I don't know. I think it's cool. I like old surplus stuff.
Surplus stuff's the best.
Yeah. So. But that would be kind of an indication or a booby trap that would give you a visual or audible indication that somebody's entering a space. Then there's also kind of the diversionary aspect of some things too, just to buy you time. And really, a flashlight would be the most basic of this category we're going to start talking about, because there's nothing that kind of puts someone off their game than a super bright flashlight to the face. Like just flashing a light will allow you to get off their center or get off their X and move into a different position to give you an advantage. So, excuse me, that can be a huge initial contact type thing that you can do for that.
There's a strobe cap that you can use as a tripwire, right? For those VIP lights, like a magnetic cap.
Yeah.
That would be kind of a good, I mean, that's not going to divert them by putting light in their eyes, but that would be another, like, pull it off and it starts to strobe. That's another one you could set up as IR.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I think the flashlight, you could set up a flashlight in a place that you weren't at, to bring a diversion so they go that way so that you can move the other way. You're going to lose the flashlight, but in an emergency.
Yeah.
I've got some of the Enola Gay smoke grenades. They're like commercially available smoke grenades. We tried them out at Muster, and they were super effective.
Work pretty good.
Yeah,
for a commercially available smoke grenade, it's pretty good.
It offered a good amount of smoke, and they have a plastic cap that helps kind of keep the pin covered, and then I have that taped down just in case, because I don't like the idea of the pin pulling in the middle of my bag.
Well, so smoke grenades are interesting because everybody kind of, I say everybody, most people that aren't really familiar with smoke grenades goes right to the movie use for them. So people will pop a smoke grenade and then like the room will fill up with smoke and like, where did they go?
Yeah, not Batman.
They're probably coming through the fucking smoke. That's where they are,
Shoot at the smoke.
Yeah, but it always cracks me up when I see movies where they do that because it's really more of a signaling device.
Which is why I have them,
So the different colors denote different things for marking landing sites and things like that. So they're not really, I mean, they can be a diversionary device, but, they're not really designed for that. Yeah. But they can be good to throw at an adversary to temporarily blind them. But
Yeah.
when I see smoke being used, like, okay, let's like right by the people,
Right.
or right by the people that are trying to cover
Yeah.
themselves. Like, it's not a cover tactic.
No. Well, and I mean, like you
it
said,
can be, but
throwing
you know
it
what
at
I
an
mean.
adversary is good because it's like you pull a pin on somebody and throw it at somebody. That's their focus of attention at that point. When something is shooting fire at them, they just saw you throw it. They're going to be worried about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they were. I think they were like $40 for 3 of them. Super good.
So along those lines too, with diversionary stuff, there's these OC pepper grenades, and these are, I forget what these are actually. They call them fog. Excuse me, but what they've got on them is a little tab. I won't take this off because I've kind of prepped this for a quick release type deal. But when you open the cap up, it's got a thumb button that you can press just like you would if you were spraying pepper spray at somebody.
Okay.
But you can actually push it to the side so that it continuously sprays pepper spray. So you could basically take this out of your, like if you were running from somebody that was chasing you and wanted to do you harm,
Right.
you could literally kind of activate it and drop it behind you so that it just continued to spray, and it would probably wind up spraying them, maybe not. It just depends on where it lands, but that's kind of like
Do you know if it has any kind of delay
an evasion technique.
when you twist?
I don't think so. I think as soon as
you'll
you twist it, it's
definitely
going
want
to be
to point
spraying.
that away from you
Yeah.
as you twist it.
Yeah, as you're running
Yeah.
away from somebody, just make sure you point in the safe direction. Yeah.
I've used pepper spray at a time where I wasn't aware of how it was used, and when I shot it, there's a really good chance you're going to get yourself. So having it behind you and knowing how it operates would be super important.
Yeah.
That's a good idea though, because that introduces an avenue of like smoke. It's like, oh, it's smoke.
Honestly, if somebody's running behind you and you just put your hand back there and activate it and just let it go
like a trail
as you're
of hate.
running, I mean, it's going to get on them.
Absolutely, that stuff hangs in the air like
Yeah.
crazy, and it hits
Yeah.
you pretty hard.
So
if they run into that, that's definitely
yeah.
a good idea.
And I've got these little old ninja caltrops.
That's some like James Bond stuff.
I know
Love
they came in a little box. I think I bought these when I was a kid, but I've still got them around. But
That's awesome.
I mean, obviously, larger caltrops are used in a lot of drug running and stupid shit like that. But these are more like little, like, ow, I stepped on a micro machine coming in your window like Home Alone, you know?
So just carry Legos with you.
Yeah.
Just drop Legos behind
Legos
you.
can be a hell of a caltrop.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I mean, they make some pretty sophisticated ones. Like, I think there's that place down in South Texas. I think it's called Texas Armor.
Oh,
Texas
yeah.
Armory?
Texas Armory.
Armory.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they've got, like, I've always wanted to do this with my FJ. Obviously, it's illegal as shit, but put a little trap door in there that drops caltrops everywhere. I mean,
Get your oil slicks.
yeah. It's now illegal in Texas to have those, but yeah.
Taking all the fun out of it.
I know. But anyway, I think that kind of going over this stuff is an interesting take on, gear and equipment, because at least it opens up some dialogue and questions. I feel like a lot of this stuff it's hard to classify this. Like, would I classify this as a breaching tool? Would I classify it as like an egress tool? Would I?
And it's tough because like breaching has so many different meanings to different people, and it's we're not cracking open doors to go into people's houses. It's more like you need to get out of somewhere.
Yeah.
But it
can also be. I mean, a prime example of that is like the flooding that's going down in Houston right now. If you needed to perform a search and rescue operation, you needed to get into buildings and look for people and look for survivors and rescue, and have true rescues that you're attempting. Tools are important. They're an important part of that job.
And bolt cutters are one of those tools that other tools can do it, but nothing does it quite like a bolt cutter, and stuff like that. And the signaling devices, I think it's always good to have multiple methods of signaling. We have those MPILs, which is not really evasive, but if you're stuck and you're not able to move, smoke could help, whistles, the signal panels, anything you can do to visually guide people to you is always good. So even this kind of stuff really isn't, but if you have a bunch of chem lights on you.
Have we talked about signaling devices on a
I don't think so.
radio yet? We need to go over those. That would be a good topic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. But everybody grows up with movies that have booby traps in them. So, I'm kind of reliving a little bit of my childhood too with, like Data from Goonies and his booby traps. His punching bag glove that comes out of his jacket, which I think is absolutely hilarious. His pinchers of power, that was another one. It's like these teeth we have for Ridiculous Dialogue. Radio. Yeah, he's got like the pinchers of power that come out on a spring and like saves his life because they like grip onto this rock and saves him from the dangling, whatever they were, the punji pit that he fell into. So it's like
a little bit of nostalgia, a little bit useful. Yeah. But I think that's good.
Yeah, it's kind of neat to look at some of this stuff, and it's neat to envision ways to use it that aren't really, it's not like you have to worry about Russians invading our campsite or something like that.
But if they
did, I would want to have these.
I think that's where a lot of people, especially listeners out there, are like, you have this, and it's like, but in case,
just in case,
I'm ready for the red parachutes.
Yeah, that's why I have Tupperware containers full of gear, just in case. Thanks for listening to Gear Tasting Radio. As always, check out some episode intel. If you go to itstitle.com, you will see our podcast episode there. It's in its entirety. We've got some show notes and stuff like that. We try to put those in the podcast episode too if you're getting it from iTunes, but as a resource, we like to put it up on the website too so that you can actually see links and stuff like that to some of the products we talk about just in case you're interested. So check that out there. And if you like what we're doing here on Gear Tasting Radio, consider joining us on Patreon. So patreon.com/ITSTactical. You can get some little member perks for helping support the show. So tune in every Tuesday for a new fresh episode of Gear Tasting Radio. Thanks again.